After my son's marriage, my daughter-in-law told me I was a nobody, that I had no legacy. She mocked me in my own home. But then she Googled me. And what she discovered left her speechless. She thought I was invisible. She had no idea who she was living with. Before continue, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That's free and only way to support us. Thank you. You ever meet someone and just feel the storm coming? Like the air shifts, the temperature changes, and your gut starts whispering, this one's trouble. That's exactly what I felt the moment my son brought her home. Her name was Alina. Dressed sharp. Nails polished. Eyes that scanned the room like she was doing an inventory check. She didn't shake my hand when she entered. Now, let's be clear. I'm not some grumpy old man who hates change. I've lived a life fuller than most people dream of. I've laughed, cried, built, lost, and rebuilt. But I've also learned to read people, and this girl? She didn't come for a family. She came for a show. And the saddest part? My son Jason was too deep in love, or whatever fog he was under, to notice. They'd barely been married 2 weeks when the house started changing. My house. The home I'd lived in for over 30 years. Suddenly, the curtains were too dusty, the dining table too dated, and my favorite recliner, the one that had supported me through 2 surgeries and 100 Sunday naps, was labeled hideous in a hushed tone she thought I wouldn't hear. She'd walk into the living room, scrunch her nose, and say things like, "Don't you think this place needs a modern touch?" As if I was some relic collecting dust on the shelf. I stayed quiet. Smiled politely. Not because I agreed, but because I'd learned a long time ago that silence is the sharpest weapon when the other person's too loud to listen. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe she felt out of place. Maybe she just had a horrible personality. Who knows? But then came the day that etched itself into my memory like a bad tattoo. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon. Jason was outside mowing the lawn. I was in the living room, sipping on my tea, reading an old Hemingway novel. She walked in with her phone in one hand and a glass of something green in the other. She glanced at me, then looked back at her screen and said, loud enough to hear but soft enough to pretend it wasn't meant for me, "You're just a nobody. You've got no legacy. No one even knows who you are." That sentence hit harder than a slap. She didn't even say it with anger. It wasn't an insult. It was a declaration. Like she genuinely believed it. Like I was some wallpaper in the background of her life, fading and peeling and just waiting to be scraped off. Now, I've been called worse in life. I've had business rivals curse me out in 3 languages. I've had friends betray me and strangers judge me. But this was different. This was personal. This was my own family. And not just any family, this was the woman my son chose. The one he brought into my home, into my peace. I looked at her, smiled slowly, and said nothing. Because sometimes, revenge doesn't start with a scream. It starts with a smirk. She had no idea who I was. She thought I was just some old man who had outlived his usefulness. A harmless, forgettable fixture in the background. She didn't know the truth. But she would. Oh, she would. I went back to my book. Let her think she won. Let her bask in her little fantasy world. Because when the curtain finally pulled back, and she saw what was really behind it, she wouldn't know whether to bow or run. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just going to be a story. It was going to be a lesson. One she'd never forget. The strange thing about being dismissed is how quickly it becomes a pattern. It's not like one day you're respected and the next you're erased. No. It starts slow. Like a leaky faucet, one drop at a time, until suddenly the whole damn floor is flooded. After that nobody comment, something shifted in the house. Or maybe I just started noticing it more. Either way, I could feel the cold draft every time she walked past me. Not physical cold. But emotional. You know, the kind where people talk over you, not to you. Meals were the first casualty. We used to eat dinner together, me, Jason, and for a time, peace. Now, they'd eat in the living room with her favorite Netflix show blasting, and I'd sit at the table alone like a forgotten placeholder in my own home. No invitation. No plate. Sometimes, not even a hello. And it wasn't just her. Jason changed too. He was still polite. Still called me Dad. But he wasn't really seeing me anymore. His eyes were always on her. Like she held the key to his manhood, and any disagreement would get it revoked. If I even tried to speak up about something, anything, he'd cut in with that gentle tone people use on toddlers and old folks. Dad, just let her do her thing. She means well. Right. And I'm the Easter Bunny. One evening, I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water, and I heard them talking in the hallway. Alina was laughing, that kind of nasal giggle that sounds like nails on a chalkboard. Honestly, your dad just sits around all day like he's retired from doing nothing. I mean, what did he even do before this? Garden. Jason chuckled nervously. He used to work in logistics or something, I think. Never really talked about it. Used to work in logistics. That was how my own son described me. Let me tell you something, when you build a multi-million-dollar company from scratch, when your name's been printed in Forbes and whispered in government offices, being reduced to something in logistics is poetic. In a tragic kind of way. I went back to my room. Closed the door. Sat on the edge of the bed and looked around at the artifacts of a life they never bothered to ask about. My shelves were filled with books I'd written. My drawers had thank you letters from people whose lives I'd changed. Medals from overseas. Photos with men in suits whose handshakes had changed markets. But to her, I was nobody. And to him, I was a footnote. It hurt more than I care to admit. You raise a child, give him the world, teach him to walk, to speak, to fight fair, and somehow, years later, you end up the villain in your own home story. But here's the thing they forgot. Just because I wasn't talking didn't mean I didn't remember how to act. I started watching them. Quietly. Observing their rhythms. What made them tick. What they cared about. Alina loved social media. Obsessed with it. Always on her phone. Taking selfies in my hallway mirror. Recording makeup tutorials in the guest room with her ring light. And Jason, he was trying to prove himself as a man, a provider. Always stressed about bills, promotion, image. He wanted to look like a hero in her eyes, but he didn't know the battlefield. I saw the cracks before they did. And I knew exactly where to push. See, revenge isn't about rage. It's about patience. It's about silence. Letting people paint their own target and aim the arrow straight at their foot. That night, I opened my old chest. The one I hadn't touched in years. Inside was a life I'd folded away like laundry, clean, pressed, forgotten. Photos. Documents. Articles. Bank statements. Private letters. Awards. Things that proved I was not just somebody. But somebody they'd regret crossing. But I didn't show them. Not yet. No. I was going to let her keep talking, keep laughing, keep posting, keep underestimating me, because every word she said was building my stage. And when the curtain finally rose, she wouldn't just eat her words. She'd choke on them. The funny thing about fading into the background is, you get a front row seat to everyone's true colors. And Alina, she was starting to glow in all the wrong shades. By the third month of living under the same roof, she'd practically declared herself queen of the castle. Jason followed her around like a loyal knight, blinded by love or maybe just too scared to challenge her throne. The house that once echoed with laughter and conversations now felt like a museum where I was just an exhibit, dusty, ignored, outdated. She'd changed the wallpaper. Replaced my antique table with something modern, ugly, and wobbly. Took down my late wife's painting and hung up abstract garbage that looked like someone sneezed paint onto a canvas. And through it all, I said nothing. But I was watching. I watched her drink her fancy matcha in the mornings while scrolling Instagram, her face always lit up more by the phone screen than by real life. I watched her invite her friends over, people who giggled at her jokes and ignored me like I was a waiter in my own kitchen. One day, I overheard her talking to one of her influencer friends. He just sits there like a decorative plant. I honestly don't think he's ever done anything important in his life. If he had, Google would have known. She laughed. And I smiled. Because now I knew. She'd already Googled me. And she'd found nothing. That wasn't an accident. Years ago, when I walked away from the empire I'd built, I didn't just retire, I erased myself. Changed names in company registries. Had articles taken down. Interviews scrubbed. I wanted peace, not headlines. I wanted to grow tomatoes, not startups. So yes, she'd searched for me. And she'd found exactly what I wanted her to, nothing. But that was about to change. The next morning, I took a walk down to my old storage unit. One of those monthly rental places that smell like cardboard and regret. Tucked inside, under tarps and boxes labeled Christmas and junk, was a briefcase. Leather. a little scuffed. Inside it, my legacy. Documents of stock ownerships. Property deeds. Receipts of donations that had saved entire communities. Signed letters from names she worshipped like celebrities on her screen. She wanted influence. I had built influence when the internet was still a rumor. But I didn't bring it home. I took one photo. Just one. A picture of me at a tech summit 25 years ago, shaking hands with a man who's now worth billions. One of her idols. A man she reposts quotes from on her Instagram stories. Like wisdom can be captured in a caption. That night, she hosted another little gathering. Wine, charcuterie, fake laughter. Jason was in the kitchen, cutting cheese nervously while she dazzled the guests. I walked in, casually scrolling on my phone, and made sure she could see my screen. She froze mid-laugh. Wait. Is that? Her voice faltered. I looked up. Oh, this? Just an old photo I found today. Brought back some memories. She snatched the phone from my hand, her fingers trembling. Her eyes scanned the image, then darted back to my face like she was seeing me for the first time. You know him? She asked, her voice small. We used to do business together, I replied with a shrug. Long time ago. Before I became a decorative plant. The room went silent. Jason looked confused. The guests looked uncomfortable. Alina looked terrified. And me. I felt reborn. She stuttered out something about how she didn't know and never realized. I sipped my water and smiled. You never asked. See, people like Alina only respect what they can see. Cars. Cash. Clout. If it's not online, it doesn't exist to them. They forget that real power doesn't need to shout. It whispers. It waits. And now. It was done waiting. Because she had finally Googled the wrong name, the one I had erased. And soon, she'd see what I had replaced it with. You'd think after seeing that photo, Alina would have done what most smart people do when they realize they've stepped on a landmine. Stop walking. But no. She went digging. Not just some lazy Google search this time. No, she dove deep. Old internet archives, obscure interviews, business directories. She even reached out to one of her college professors who once wrote a paper on silent tech magnates of the early 2000s. She thought she was being sneaky. Like I wouldn't notice her peeking through keyholes and whispering into her phone in the laundry room. But I noticed. I always notice. And honestly, I let her. Let her uncover one breadcrumb after another until she finally found it, the name I once carried in the business world. Not the name I live by now, but the one etched in patents, tech magazines, and keynote speaker rosters. A name that carried enough weight to crash her ego in one hit. The next few days were quiet. Uncomfortably quiet. She stopped criticizing the furniture. Didn't bring up renovations or modernizing anything. Even made me tea once, though I didn't drink it. Just in case she decided humility required poison. Jason started acting weird too. He wasn't the type to Google, but clearly, she had told him something. One evening, he knocked on my door with a puzzled look and a glass of wine. Dad, he said, why didn't you ever tell me you were? You know. A big deal. I stared at the wine, then back at him. Because you never asked. He looked away. Embarrassed. Not just for being clueless, but for letting her mold his perception of me. For standing silently while she threw stones at the man who built the house they lived in. But it was too late for apologies. I wasn't interested in being celebrated. I wasn't looking for forgiveness. I wanted something deeper. I wanted her to feel it. One morning, I left a folder on the kitchen counter. Nothing dramatic. Just a plain black folder with a single word on the front, Legacy. Inside were a few printed articles. A photo of my old company's headquarters with my name on the plaque. A letter from the mayor of Chicago thanking me for funding youth education programs. A receipt for a single donation that funded clean water for over 100,000 people in rural areas. And a check. Blank. Signed. I didn't say a word. Just left it there and went out for my walk. When I returned, the house was silent again. I found her sitting on the couch, staring at the folder like it had burned her hands. Jason was beside her, holding it open, flipping through the pages with wide eyes and trembling lips. I walked past them, poured myself some coffee, and sat at the table. She finally spoke. Her voice wasn't smug anymore. It was thin. Fragile. You funded all of this? You used to. I didn't even look at her. Just sipped my coffee. Jason spoke next. Dad, why did you hide all of this? Why didn't you? I cut him off gently. You don't plant seeds to be thanked. You do it so someone else can sit in the shade. That shut him up. Alina tried to laugh. That nervous little chuckle people do when they're trying to defuse a bomb they already stepped on. I just thought. I didn't know. I finally looked at her. My eyes met hers. You still don't. I got up and left the room. Left them in the silence I had lived in for months. But this time, it was their silence. Not mine. That night, I heard them arguing. Jason asking why she disrespected me. Her fumbling for answers. She tried to spin it, said I acted like a nobody, so she assumed I was one. But what she never understood was this: real strength isn't loud. Real legacy doesn't need to be performed. It speaks when necessary. And it's silence. That's what terrifies people the most. Alina had finally seen the ghost behind the curtain, the quiet man who had done more than her entire social media feed combined. And the thing about ghosts. Once you see one, you can't unsee it. The thing about power is, once people realize you have it, they don't look at you the same way. Alina stopped speaking around me unless absolutely necessary. Gone were her little sarcastic digs and passive-aggressive decorating suggestions. She'd walk into a room and stiffen like a deer spotting a lion in the tall grass. She tried to be sweet now, which was almost more insulting than the mockery. I preferred her honest cruelty over this fake kindness. Jason, to his credit, seemed genuinely shaken. He apologized a few times, in that way sons do when they realize their heroes aren't on TV but sitting silently across the dinner table. He even asked me to help him with a business idea, something about a mobile app for local deliveries. I smiled, nodded, and said I'd think about it. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about giving anymore. This was about showing. Alina, for all her flaws, wasn't stupid. She knew she'd messed up. But instead of owning it, she did what arrogant people always do: she tried to spin the narrative. A few days later, I heard her on a phone call in the garden. She was talking to a friend, one of her loud, makeup-obsessed ones who wore high heels to the supermarket. She said, "He's actually super rich. But, like, he hides it on purpose. It's kind of sad, honestly. Like he's ashamed or something." Ashamed? Lady, I built 3 companies from scratch while raising a kid and caring for a wife dying of cancer. I buried the love of my life and still made it to every PTA meeting. I didn't hide my past. I just didn't rub it in everyone's face, especially not over brunch. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just rude. She was entitled. She thought legacy meant photo shoots, public applause, and hashtags. She couldn't comprehend that some people find joy in anonymity, in living quietly after living loudly for too long. So, I decided to give her a lesson in value. I made a few phone calls. Pulled some favors. Booked a charity gala ticket under my old name, one that still made doors swing open. And then I left the ticket sitting on the counter one morning with her name scribbled beside it. She saw it. Read it twice. "What's this?" she asked me, cautious like a cat sniffing an unfamiliar box. "An event. Thought you might enjoy it. Very exclusive. Black tie. Media presence. The whole thing." I saw her pupils dilate like someone had just offered her a free Chanel bag. She tried to act casual. "Oh. Cool. Maybe. I'll see if I'm free." I walked away before the drool hit the floor. What she didn't know was that the event wasn't just fancy. It was a reunion of sorts. Some of the old guard would be there, ex-colleagues, founders, philanthropists. People who knew me not just by name, but by legend. I knew exactly what would happen. She'd go. She'd dress up like she was auditioning for a magazine spread. She'd drop my name in conversation, trying to gain clout from a man she once called a nobody. And then, the walls would start whispering. One by one, people would approach her. "Wait. You're related to him. You're his daughter-in-law." I remember when She wouldn't be able to hide. The truth would be everywhere. It wouldn't scream at her. It would crawl under her skin. And that was the revenge. Not shouting. Not arguing. But watching someone be crushed under the weight of their own ignorance. When she got home that night from the gala, she didn't say a word. Not to me. Not to Jason. She just walked in, took off her heels, and disappeared into their room like a balloon that had finally popped. And I sat in my chair, the same ugly one she wanted to throw out months ago, with a warm cup of tea and a smile. Because silence is louder than any scream when delivered at the right time. The silence after the gala didn't last long. People like Alina don't accept defeat, they rebrand it. If shame was a currency, she'd have declared bankruptcy and launched a new identity overnight. The very next morning, she pranced into the kitchen with fresh makeup, overdone confidence, and a smoothie in a glass bigger than her self-awareness. She didn't even look at me. She looked through me. Like the night before never happened. Like her world hadn't just been flipped upside down by the same nobody she had dismissed months ago. But I saw the twitch in her left eyebrow. The kind of twitch that says, I'm not okay, but I refuse to admit it. She started acting sweeter. That fake sweetness you can smell from a mile away. Complimenting my cardigans. Asking if I needed help with the groceries. Offering me one of her overpriced organic protein bars. Jason thought she was just warming up to me. Bless his loyal little heart. But I knew better. She was spinning. Trying to find control again. Like a child fumbling with building blocks after knocking them over, but not realizing the foundation was never hers to begin with. Later that week, she posted a photo from the gala. Her standing next to one of my old business partners, captioned with some vague quote about building legacies and learning from the past. It had 3 hashtags, #entrepreneur mindset, #legacy goals, #wisdom over age. Wisdom over age. Please. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my tea. She was trying to co-opt my story now. Rewriting the narrative so it looked like she had always known who I was. Like she had always admired me. Suddenly, she was inspired. Suddenly, I was her role model. But inspiration without humility? That's not growth. That's PR. And I don't do PR. So I decided it was time for one final push. One reminder she couldn't ignore. One that would settle the score, not through humiliation, but through elevation. My kind of legacy. I made another call. There was a mentorship event happening, one I used to speak at every year before I disappeared from the spotlight. They still remembered me. In fact, they'd been trying to get me back for nearly a decade. This time, I said yes. Not as a keynote speaker. No. That would be too easy. I went as a pain list. Quiet. Controlled. Understated. I wore an old suit, carried my worn-out briefcase, and spoke with the same calm I always had. But I brought Alina with me. I told her it would be good for her personal brand. The moment we walked in, I saw it, the recognition in the organizer's eyes. The way staff stood straighter. The way people glanced our way, whispering to one another. She noticed it too. Her posture changed. Her breathing quickened. And when I stepped onto that stage, microphone in hand, and began to speak, I wasn't just a father-in-law anymore. I was a mirror. A mirror that showed her exactly who she had been. Who she had judged. Who she had mocked. And most importantly, who she would never be. I didn't mention her. Not once. I didn't embarrass her. I didn't expose her behavior. Because I didn't need to. She sat in the front row, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, like a fan who had finally realized the rock star was the man living down the hall in slippers and a cardigan. After the talk, people lined up to speak to me. Old colleagues. Young entrepreneurs. Reporters. One of them even asked, "How does it feel to be a living legend in front of your family?" I glanced at Alina and smiled. It feels like silence finally paid off. She didn't speak the entire ride home. Jason asked if she was okay. She nodded, but her eyes betrayed her. Eyes that had once rolled at me now trembled with something else. Not fear, not anger. Something worse. Respect. But it was too late. You can't unsay cruelty. You can't undo ignorance. You can apologize, sure, but you can't erase the bruise. She had judged me by my silence. And now she had to live with the echo. She couldn't sleep. I could hear her pacing through the hallway at night, soft footsteps back and forth, like she was trying to outrun the thoughts in her head. The silence that once made her feel superior now haunted her like a shadow. During the day, she still played pretend, made smoothies, posted filtered selfies, laughed at her own jokes louder than anyone else. But there was a hesitation now. A glitch in her performance. The kind of twitch a liar gets when they forget which lie they told last. Jason didn't see it. Or maybe he did and chose not to. He was just happy the two of us weren't arguing. He thought the storm had passed. But I knew better. It was just beginning. Alina started making awkward attempts at conversations with me, asking about business stuff she clearly didn't understand, quoting motivational speakers she discovered last week and pretending she always believed in silent leadership. She even offered to interview me for a podcast she wanted to launch. A podcast. She wanted to rebrand me as the mysterious father-in-law who built an empire in secret. I nearly choked on my biscuit. She wasn't interested in who I was. She was interested in how she could spin it, control it, Monet-ize it. And I could see the desperation building in her eyes, a woman who realized the crown she wore was made of plastic. So I gave her exactly what she wanted. An invitation. To a private investors roundtable, old school, no press, no photos. Just suits, cigars, and conversations worth millions. I told her she could come as an observer, just to learn the ropes. She dressed like a TV anchor. Had her nails done, hair professionally curled, heels tall enough to cause altitude sickness. Jason dropped us off and kissed her goodbye like she was going on a pilgrimage. The meeting wasn't even 10 minutes in before the men at the table realized she was out of her depth. She tried to speak, once, some nonsense about market disruption and digital branding. They smiled politely. Then they ignored her. I didn't. I let her sit there, smile frozen, confidence leaking through the cracks in her voice. She was just another tourist in a temple she couldn't understand. Afterward, on the drive back, she didn't speak. And neither did I. She sat staring out the window, her reflection barely visible in the glass. I wondered what she saw. Regret, shame, confusion. She finally broke the silence, mumbling, "I didn't expect all that." I responded simply, "Most people don't. That's why most people never build anything that lasts." We got home. She walked straight to the bedroom and closed the door. No social media posts. No dinner party. No passive-aggressive jabs. Just silence. For once, real silence. Jason came to me that night and asked something he hadn't before. "Did we hurt you, Dad?" I looked at him. My boy. My son. The same kid who used to fall asleep on my chest while I worked through spreadsheets. The kid I taught how to ride a bike and how to balance a checkbook. "Yes," I said. "But pain doesn't break you if you're already whole." He nodded, eyes misty, and left. And that was the first time I felt something shift, not in Alina, but in Jason. He was waking up, starting to see things for what they were. Not just through her lens, but his own. Alina had tried to build a throne on sand, influence without integrity, presence without purpose. And now it was sinking. Fast. And me. I was just sitting by the shore, sipping my tea, watching the tide do what it always does. She started avoiding me. Not in the obvious way, not running out of rooms or slamming doors. No, this was quieter. She stopped making comments. Stopped performing. Stopped pretending to care about anything I had to say. And in that silence was fear. Not fear of me physically. No. She wasn't afraid I'd shout or lash out. That wasn't my style. She feared what I represented now. Proof. Proof that everything she thought she understood about power, legacy, and respect was built on fluff. That she had married into something far larger than she could manipulate. That her filters and captions and brand deals couldn't hold a candle to a man who didn't need a platform to be powerful. She was lost. Jason noticed it too. He kept trying to bring us back together, game nights, family dinners, walks in the park. But nothing worked. Alina was retreating into herself. Her spark, the one she used to burn everyone else with, was now flickering like a dying bulb. One evening, I walked past their bedroom and saw the door slightly open. She was sitting on the floor. Laptop open. Dozens of tabs running. My name. Everywhere. She had finally found it all. The stuff she missed the first time, the deep links, the archived forums, the investor bulletins from 15 years ago. Even the photo of me shaking hands with a prime minister. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. Not because of what she found, but because she didn't find herself anywhere in it. She wasn't part of my story. She was just a chapter in Jason's. And that, I think, was the final blow. The next morning, she tried to talk to me. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Why did you walk away from it all? You had everything." I looked at her, not angry, not smug, just steady. Because after you build a world, you realize peace is the only part worth keeping. She didn't understand it. Not fully. But I saw the gears trying to turn. And for the first time, she didn't respond with a quip or a deflection. She just nodded. Quietly. Like a student at the back of a class who finally realized the lesson had started long before she entered the room. That day, something shifted again. She deactivated her Instagram. Removed her name from a few online bios. Stopped wearing heels inside the house. She started sitting beside Jason in silence instead of dominating every conversation. Started listening when people spoke, even if she didn't have something clever to add. I won't say she changed completely. People like her don't transform overnight. But she began to feel the weight of her own emptiness, and for once, instead of running from it, she let it settle. Jason pulled me aside later and said, "She's different lately. Quieter. I think she's processing." I smiled. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I'd finally given her something she never had before, perspective. And that's what legacy really is. Not wealth. Not applause. Not being Googled. It's what you leave behind in the minds of those who underestimated you. That evening, I sat in my recliner, the same one she once tried to throw away, and read one of my old journals. Not for nostalgia, just to remind myself of who I was before the silence. And then I heard her voice again. Soft, humble, almost human. I used to think legacy was being seen. I looked up. And now? She looked down at her hands, unsure of her own words. Now I think it's being remembered. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for the first time since she entered my home, she finally understood whose house she was standing in. A week later, Jason suggested we host a dinner. Just the three of us. No guests, no noise, no theatrics. A quiet meal in the house that now felt more like mine again. I agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly because I sensed this story was nearing its final chapter. Alina cooked. That alone was strange. She'd always seen cooking as something beneath her, a waste of time when you can just order something beautiful. But there she was, apron on, hair tied back, chopping vegetables with the precision of someone trying to say sorry without using words. Jason helped her. They didn't speak much while they worked, but the silence wasn't awkward this time. It was calm, earnest, maybe even real. I sat at the table, watching. Not judging, just observing, the way I always had. Dinner was simple. Roast chicken. Mashed potatoes. No Instagram-perfect presentation. No garnish nobody eats. Just food. Honest, warm food. We ate mostly in silence, and I was fine with that. But halfway through the meal, Alina finally broke. Her fork dropped with a soft clink. She looked at me. Not with pity. Not with pride. But with something closer to understanding. "I didn't mean to make you feel erased." That was all she said. No dramatic speech. No tears. Just a single sentence, raw, unpolished, real. I didn't answer right away. I finished chewing. Took a sip of water. And then I looked her dead in the eyes. "You didn't erase me. You just never saw me." That hit her. Her shoulders dropped. Her hands went still. And in that moment, I saw something I never thought I'd see from her: surrender. Not to me, to the truth. Jason reached for her hand, and for once, it didn't feel like she was leading him. They were side by side now. Both aware of the damage done. Both wanting to do better. I stood up, walked to the living room, and returned with a small, worn-out box. I placed it in front of her. She opened it slowly. Inside were three things. A photo of me and Jason from when he was 5, holding a toy airplane, both of us smiling so wide it looked staged, but it wasn't. A newspaper clipping from the early 2000s. Silent Titan of Tech donates $4 million to children's research. And a handwritten letter from my late wife, addressed to me. The ink faded, the paper yellowed, but the words still strong. Her words. Her pride. Her belief in who I was, even when no one else saw it. Alina read every item carefully. Her lips moved, mouthing the words on the letter. Her eyes glistened. "I never knew," she whispered. "You never tried to." And that was the difference. All this time, she'd been obsessed with visibility. She thought being seen was the same as being respected. That the loudest person was the most powerful. That influence could be built from borrowed quotes and designer shoes. But now she was learning the oldest truth there is. The quiet ones aren't weak. They are focused. The invisible ones aren't irrelevant. They are just watching. And the ones who never spoke? They're the ones whose words will echo long after everyone else has gone silent. Jason cleared the table after dinner. She helped him. No phone, no selfies, no comments about aesthetic. Just soap, water, and a woman who had finally begun to wipe the mirror clean. As they finished, Jason turned to me and said, "I think we all needed this." I nodded. Some lessons only come after the storm. And Alina? She didn't speak. But as she passed by me, she placed her hand gently on my shoulder, just for a second. That touch said more than her voice ever could. Not because it was warm, but because it was finally honest. Weeks passed. The house was different now. Not just quieter, softer. Like the energy had shifted, like the ghosts had finally decided to rest. Even the air felt lighter. Maybe that's what happens when truth finally finds its place. Jason started spending more time with me. Not out of guilt, not out of obligation. He'd just come sit beside me in the evenings, asking questions about my old ventures, my travels, even my failures. He listened the way sons should. The way he used to, back when the world still fit inside a sandbox. Alina, meanwhile, had shed the performance. No more filters. No more podcast plans. She spent more time reading. Asking real questions. Listening to stories without trying to sell them back to the world. One day, she came into my room with a notebook. Sat on the edge of the bed, hesitated like a child about to ask her parents something big. "Would you teach me?" she said. "Teach you what?" "Everything." I almost laughed. But I didn't. Because I saw it in her eyes, the flicker of real curiosity. Not greed. Not ambition. Just the rare, humbling realization that she didn't know as much as she thought. I said yes. We didn't start with finance or leadership or any of that buzzword garbage. We started with people. Character. Listening. Patience. Failure. I gave her the education no MBA ever could. The kind you earn through scar tissue and long nights alone with your thoughts. And to her credit, she absorbed it. Quietly. Consistently. She didn't change overnight. But she changed. And I didn't need an apology anymore. Because her actions had finally outgrown her ego. One afternoon, Jason handed me a package. A hardbound book. No title on the cover. Just my initials embossed in gold. I opened it. Inside were chapters of my life, written by her. Stories I'd told. Quotes I'd shared. Things I'd thought were lost in the wind. She'd written it all down. The final page said only this. To the man who taught me that the loudest voice in the room is rarely the one worth listening to. I closed the book and let it rest on my lap. That was it. That was the moment the revenge finished cooking, not as an explosion, not as a takedown, but as a quiet understanding that she finally saw me. Fully. And she'd never forget me. She didn't have to tell anyone else who I was anymore. Because now. She knew. And that was enough. A few days later, I saw her standing in the garden. The same garden where she once gossiped on the phone about how I was a nobody. But this time, she wasn't talking. She was planting something. A tree. She looked over her shoulder and caught me watching. Smiled. A real one. The kind that doesn't ask for applause. Legacy isn't what people say when you're gone. It's what they finally understand while you're still here. And me. I didn't need revenge anymore. Because the truth had already done the job. Quietly. Perfectly. Just like I always did. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That's free and only way to support us. Thank you.